plays 2 to 5 players and takes about 60 to 150 minutes to play, and this is a political negotiation game where Julius Caesar has just been assassinated, and players are competing to become the next ruler of Rome. Players are going to be competing over a series of rounds to gain power and influence, and there's always going to be one player acting as the Imperium Maius, and that's always the player who had the most control at the start of each round. Throughout the game, the other players are kind of working semi-cooperatively against that Imperium Maius to try and gain authority and gain control of those individual fields of power to try and collectively take that player down, but then individually position themselves as the best suitor for the next ruler of Rome. Each round plays over a series of phases, and the first phase is the building phase. And this is where players will be able to build different building tiles around the board, and each section in the board represents a different phase in the game, and each phase is going to allow players to perform different actions, but if you have buildings built in that area of the board during that phase, that will give you some special bonuses or additional options during that phase. Buildings can also give you instant one-time effects when you place them, as well as grant you victory points at the end of the game. After the building phase, players move into the production phase, where every player is going to gain 1 military, 1 political, and 1 social and support cube, which they'll be able to use later in the game. And just like I mentioned, if any players have built buildings in the production phases space on the board, then they'll be able to perform additional actions here. Players will then move into the enlist phase, where they'll be able to buy cards to add to their own personal player board, and this is going to allow certain upgrades for players to manipulate their cubes into different resources and gain more authority and gain more control in different areas, and try to manipulate their positioning of power in the 3 different areas. But you can only ever have a total of 7 cubes and cards, so after the enlist phase, you move into the discard phase, where players will discard down to that limit of 7. After that, players move into the commit phase for the player who is currently in power, and at this phase, that player is going to be able to use the cards that they have to convert their resources, gain authority, and manipulate the game state for their favor, and then reveal those decisions to all the players. After that, players can negotiate freely amongst each other and trade different resources and cards and make certain plans in order to work together and try to stop the person in power. All negotiations are non-binding, so just because you fulfill your end of the bargain doesn't mean the other player has to when it comes to them keeping their word. After the players are done negotiating, it then moves into their commit phase, where the players will be able to use their own cards to convert resources and gain authority and manipulate the balance of the game, just like the player who is currently in power was able to do in the previous round. The difference here is that this is all done in secret, and then in the following resolution phase, all players reveal the decisions that they made, and a lot of players may be upset to see that the other players did not follow through with their end of the bargain. All the players' decisions are then resolved, and if different players are now in control of the different areas of power, then that single player of power's role is going to shift over to whoever controls the most fields of power, or if there's no single player that controls the most fields of power, then it's going to go to one of those players that has the most authority. After that, we move into the cleanup phase, and the rounds continue in the same sequence of phases until the end of the game, and the number of rounds in a game is dictated by the number of players. Victory points are then totaled up from the different tiles and cards that the players have gained throughout the game, any buildings they've built that also grant them victory points, as well as victory points gained from any remaining coins that have been unspent. The player with the most victory points at the end of the game wins the game.